is it hard to tell over and over again? Or do you feel like, yeah, how do you feel at this point, like 17 years in?
Yeah. Well, 17 years was when we lived in California, but it's been, it'll be 14 years Christmas Eve.
Okay.
So, but it's an interesting thing. I'm actually, so now I'm overdose crisis coordinator and organizer. That's so funny. I'm saying it wrong. But one of the things that I'm doing right off the bat, our first kind of educational event is effective overdose crisis advocacy. And, it's broken up into 3 ones. This one is the human element. And really what it comes down to is things that we've talked about in this call about how, language matters in the way that you talk about substance use really matters. People used to walk around talking about junkies and crackheads and that kind of stuff. That's not helpful. And that is dehumanizing and, other things, follow from that. But also just kind of the idea of lifting people up who are, people are traumatized, people are scarred. You know what I mean? Yeah. I have referred to it regularly as this just kind of like open wound that I just keep pulling the scab off and pulling the scab off. No, it's not easy. Like it's not easy. And I think at the end of the day, I wouldn't if there wasn't some, if I didn't feel like it could do some good. And if I didn't feel like someone, that someone could hear it and maybe change their perspective, because at the heart of it is people who want to profit. Let's be real. But, but because of that and the propaganda that goes around it and things, it's very stigmatized and it's harmful to people, when you want to speak up. I still feel like, I don't know, there's probably people watching who judge me now, you know what I mean? Who are like, oh, she did drugs back in the day and, judge me, based on that and stuff like that. And, that's harmful. But at the end of the day, I don't mind sharing it, and I'll stand up and I'll share it and I'll say it regardless. If I think that it'll actually do some good. It's kind of interesting. I was thinking about it the other day because, my brother passed away a couple of years ago. And my best friend, and he, it was alcoholism. He died of alcoholism. And it's a very different situation in the way that I talk about it. And I love my brother. He literally like my best friend my whole life. And so losing him was really hard. But it's really interesting because I don't talk about it like that. Like Corey, I go around and I tell this story. And it's funny because it's like, there's, because it's the feeling of, I don't know if you can understand this or what on some level, I'm sure, but the feeling of cheapening someone's memory by using it in a way. Does that make sense? And like, but that's why I say is like, I'm not telling the story because I want people to feel bad for me or like anything like that. That's the last thing I want to do. I'm a strong ass bitch. Don't feel bad for me. You know what I mean? I'm doing the thing. Okay. But I think people need to understand it, and people can't understand it unless they really hear it and feel it. I have sat with, like, Annie Custer is one of my representatives in Washington, and I have sat there and talked to her staffers. And I've done this many times. I've done this quite a few times with legislators in Boston. I mean, not Boston, in Washington and things like that. But I remember when I went to talk to them about substance use, and I sat there and I told the story about Corey and about how my youngest, like I said, I was telling all of these stories because I wanted my kids to know who Corey was in a good way. I wanted them to know how amazing of a human he was. And my son, my youngest, so Corrado, my oldest, was in a lot of these stories. Benny wasn't. Benny wasn't born yet. He was born 2 weeks later, almost 3 weeks later. And so, so Benny wasn't in any of the stories. Corey, Corrado was in some, but Benny wasn't in any. And my youngest at one point just decided to start telling stories. He was maybe 4 or 5 years old. He just decided to start telling stories and include himself in these stories that he was telling about him and daddy. I'm like, how can you, unless you are a mom, understanding like the psychology of that, like he's trying to forge a connection with this person who it's just so much that goes into it. But I have sat there and I told that part of the story to these staffers all sitting around like a boardroom table, and Annie Custer was in the other room and her door was open. Like her office was in there and her doors. I didn't realize this at the time, but I realized it as we were walking out because she was talking to one of her staffers who was with us. But so like all of these people in this open office are listening. And I look around when I get done with my story and literally every single person has tears in their eyes. You have to feel that. Like it's worth it for you to feel that. It's worth it for all of those people who are there, who are a voice at the table when policy is being made. It is worth it for those people to understand it on that level.